Hey fly tires, welcome back. And if this is your first time here, then welcome. My name is Matt and this channel is all about learning to tie flies. Now the pattern I'm going to be walking through today is from Dave Hughes, Essential Trout Flies. It's called a fur caddis larva. It's a super easy pattern to tie, can be very effective. I think you're going to enjoy it. Let's get started. So I will explain the materials as I go and put the recipe in the description. So I'm starting off with a size 14. This is a Tiemco. It's a 2X short curved hook. Now you can tie this on 1X short or even just a standard curve hook. And the most common size is 12 to probably as small as a 16. Now I'm going to lay down about 8 wraps of 015 weight. Okay, when you got that jammed up into your bead there, oh, I didn't mention, this is a 2.4 millimeter tungsten bead. Just pick a bead size to match your hook. So I'm using black 8/0 thread. I'm going to put a little dam behind the weight, wrap some of it over the weight just to lock it in, then build a taper, and then take the thread base back to well around the bend of the hook. Okay, so that is about how far back we're going to make the body. I'm going to bring the thread back up just a little bit. I'll show you why in a second. Put about 3 inches of wax on here before we put our dubbing. So the dubbing on this thing it's fur. So I'm using a natural rabbit. Use a caddis or even an olive green if you can. And then you can use some sparkle yarn. I'm using ice dub. I'm mixing it with some caddis green ice dub. So I've got some green rabbit and some ice dub. A little clump, just mix it in with my fingers there. And I'm going to put a bead or a noodle about 3 inches or so. Now the good thing about tying it with this fur is if you put too much dubbing, it doesn't matter. You don't have to use it all. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So I'm leaving about a couple millimeters of thread showing right there. And we're gonna do a loop. So put your finger down at the bottom of that. Capture this up right here. A couple of wraps back. So I'm taking that a couple wraps back there. Now I'll take my thread back up here. And if you don't have the taper just right, now's the time to fill it in. Get your taper how you want it right there. Now bring your thread back up here. So the easiest way to spin this dubbing loop is if you've got this tool right here. It's a heavy brass with a hook on the end. Now you could do it with a pair of hackle pliers if you want, but this just spins so much easier because it's very heavy. So I'll give it a clockwise spin right there. You can see that. It's catching a little bit on the tip of my vise there, but I'm going to give it another little spin. And if you can see that, that's a pretty tight noodle right there. And if you've got room, you can just use this tool and spin it around, but I've got a camera about 4 inches in front of me, so I'm going to have to pull that off here and then catch it in with my hackle pliers. So I left a couple of millimeters so that the first couple of wraps are going back, are not putting any dubbing down. So you see that right there. That is where I'm going to start I don't know if I can get it a little bit further back right there. Okay. So now that's where I'm going to start my body. And if you need to, you can use your hackle pliers and just give them another spin, like I'm doing right here. Tighten it up a little bit. And this tight little rope is almost giving us the segmentation here. So go ahead, bring this up to, I don't know, 3/4 of the body. We're going to leave a little bit of room for a different color thorax right here. So, and you see why I said if you have too much dubbing, don't worry about it, because we are just going to capture this in right here, and then we can cut that off. So I'm wasting a little bit of dubbing, but that's not too big of a deal. Now that's your body. You can see it's got a little bit of segmentation, almost looks a little bit ribbed right there. So next up, put about, I don't know, wax on maybe 2 inches. Now we want this to be a little bit darker. I'm just plucking out some hare's mask right below at the base of the ear. And then I'm mixing it with a little bit of brown. You can just go straight hare's mask. I mix it in with a little bit of brown rabbit just to give it a darker color. So put about an inch or an inch and a half noodle on here. Now you don't need to do a dubbing loop for this one. You're not doing too much, and you don't necessarily want it to be as tight as that rope we just had for the segmented body. We want a little bit of spikiness on the thorax there. So after you've wrapped that, I'm not using head cement on these. You really can't with this bead right here. So you could either do a 4 or 5 turn whip finish, or maybe 2, 3 turn whip finishes would certainly be sufficient. After you snip that off, now don't worry about it being spiky. You might actually want it to be a little spikier than it is. Take your bodkin and pick some of that out if you need to, or a piece of Velcro. I think that one looks fine right there, and that will fish just fine. So there you go. That's a fur caddis larva, one of many caddis larvas out there, but this one I found to be very easy to fish and very effective. So that's it, folks. I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.